Anyway, welcome. Okay, I guess we are ready to roll. We have a lot going on here, and we don't want to be too disruptive, but we have a number of our whole program is attending one way or the other. And so we are ready to roll. Welcome everyone to the May meeting. I want to make sure I don't get a month wrong. Get the May meeting of Speakers Bureau. We are about to have a full program tonight. So we have a number of things. We have one speaker that will be going for their qualifying speaker designation next month. I'll let you know about that. June 2nd, we have also another one, Al Batinga. You've heard him on one or two occasions in the past here when we had our speakathon, I think on women's history and maybe one other time. So Al Batinga will be going for his qualifying speech in June. And Michael, what you want to say a few words about your guest you will be bringing to us from across the pond.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. Natalie Thomas is about ready to graduate from the public health program at a university in southern England, the UK. But she's also a Toastmaster. She's an area director in Founders District, remotely, of course. And she is using Toastmasters to help her with her final presentations before the board, because they do things different in the UK when you graduate from university. And I volunteered her on the Speakers Bureau. She'll do a 20-minute talk. Her focus will be on health in older adults, I believe, cardiovascular disease, fascinating things, and maybe with kids, depending on what we decide. We're meeting tomorrow to discuss this, but there's great opportunity to hear a Toastmaster, an area director, working on her final piece of her degree, and we could help her graduate with honors, which is, to me, isn't that why we do these things? For people to excel outside the organization. Mr. Tom.
Okay, Michael, you're co-chair. I want to make sure everybody knows that, but tell them a little bit. You can tease them a little bit about what we plan to do in July.
July. We've tried this in our club at Debatable, and I learned this when I was in England. When you stand on your soapbox and you carry on for a few minutes about what bothers you. And so we have a great opportunity in July. Everyone will get, I don't know how much time is going to give you time. Tom will give you 5 minutes, and you can go and talk about anything that's driving you crazy. Is it drivers? Is it people that own Teslas? Is it waiting in line at the grocery store and people don't have their wallet? Whatever it is, go on, yell and scream about it. And we want to hear you pontificate about the things that are driving you crazy in your life. There you go, Tom.
Okay, that sounds like it's going to be a fun idea. I've already got people telling me. I don't think I've officially signed anybody up yet, but we have a few. One gentleman who knows what he's talking about is going to come in and tell us about why we should not be afraid or worry about using Roundup. Very good controversial topic. And he's the one who knows what he's talking about. We'll see whether anyone agrees with him or not. But anyway, yes, we have an exciting program for July. We have another exciting program set for September. July, we expect to have about 15 or 16, just like we did in Women's History. And last year, Mother's Day and Father's Day and another one, we had World Cultural Awareness Day, where 16 different countries were represented by people who would tell us about what that country was about, not necessarily their country, but that particular country that they were enthused about. So a couple of big programs, and I think in those we will be expecting people to be here in person. So we'll have a little more people in attendance in person. We've been pushing to try to get more people back to that in-person experience, which is really, in my mind, what Toastmasters is all about. Brian, you are going to tell us, maybe I'll ask you to talk just a little bit about what you're going to talk about next month. You're going to be one of our speakers also. Brian?
You got me with my mouth full. Give me a second.
All right, want to tease us just a little bit with what you're going to do. I know he's going to.
Nope, I'm ready. You ready?
All right, go ahead.
I delivered a 5 to 7 minute speech. The title was A Napkin for Alex. And I'm going to give you the spoiler here. Alex is ALYKS. It stands for Act Like You Know Something. My mother had all these expressions that she used to use Most of them were designed to make you feel like you didn't know anything or that you were stupid. And I took all of her ways of saying things and made them into a speech that's intended to entertain and to help you understand that the things that people say to you don't have to be true for you. And anyway, I have also consulted with my sisters to gather more information about things my mom used to say, things like, I'm not talking to the wall. And
Who do you think you are, the queen?
who do you think you are, the Queen of Sheba? Things like that. You probably know some of these expressions, but I've formatted that into a speech that will, I hope, entertain you and help you realize that the way parents talk to children can be taken one of two ways. For me, it turned into a healthy rejection of all authorities, which is challenging and still validating and liberating at the same time. That's what my speech is about. I will be delivering that in June if you'll allow
Okay,
me.
well, I know you're gonna bring some humor to our meetings, and you can never have enough humor. I don't think that's something really special. We had a theme meeting of just a few years ago where we told everyone in attendance had to come in with 3 jokes. And for some, that was a challenge. We go around the room and tell one joke. Okay, your turn, your turn, your turn. Everybody had to come up with the joke, and so that's a talent. Actually, I believe that probably each Toastmaster meeting, like we have educational moments and other things, one opportunity to get, if you're in a decent sized club, you wouldn't get to tell more than 3 or 4 jokes in a year, but you ought to have that skill to be able to do that on a spur of the moment, to be able to have one joke. I used to have a longtime Toastmaster that I knew, 30-year Toastmaster, that carried his jokes around in his pocket, in his wallet. So if he was called upon to be the jester, he would open up his wallet and tell us one of the 3 or 4 jokes that we all knew by that time, but that the new people to the club didn't know that. But yeah, we will have some fun. Maybe we'll do another humor themed meeting sometime in the future. That's a good reminder to us. Okay, as we said, we have a full program. We are getting ready to go. I see we have a number of qualified speakers in the room, so we will be, oh, by the way, I did want to say one more thing. We have to congratulate one of our members, and we can see her hiding up there behind Brian, the district winner for the evaluation contest. Dominique, congratulations. Yes. I noticed not everybody was applauding because 2 or 3 people lost to you so along the way. So they weren't applauding, but that's okay. Okay, let us go on from here. We have our special guest talking about a special person. A couple of months ago, we had Women's History Month where we focused on women in history, and various people spoke about various people. And we had one that didn't get a chance to do it that night. We did a couple of last month. We squeezed those in. They had gotten ill or whatever, but Rosalind Carter didn't get a chance to do her speech on the first woman president of Toastmasters International. So she has a little bit of information. You actually may get to see Helen Blanchard speak, the late Helen Blanchard speak, and you'll get a chance to hear Roz Carter, our past district governor. Am I right? You were still a governor when you did that? Past district governor, past regional advisor, regional advisor, Rosalind Carter. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, take it away.
Okay. I want to ask Rob Gunneman, do you have my video ready? Okay, he's going to show it in just a few minutes, not yet. But that's the lady of the hour, Helen Blanchard, who said, if you get out of Toastmasters all you can get out of Toastmasters, you'll never get out of Toastmasters. That's the lady, Helen Blanchard, who quoted that years and years, decades ago. And it has stuck in my mind. I've been in Toastmasters for 20 years. Never thought I would say that. But there are many people like Michael Osier and even Tom Jameson who exceeds that, like by 50 years, Tom, in being Toastmasters. And why do we want to stick around? Why do we stay in Toastmasters? Rob sends that message to people and takes a video of their response throughout the month so that we could hear what others have to say. Why did they join and why did they stay? We have many reasons, and so do I. But I want you to hear from the First Lady, the First Lady of Toastmasters. She never sought out to be a groundbreaker. She's the product of a small town in Nebraska. Kind of reminds me of Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. So think back in the days when there was black and white television and the stay-at-home mom who prepared meals for her family. Her husband went to work and she stayed home. It wasn't a punishment. It was a time of reflecting on family. So family is first. And then we have Toastmasters. We have a Toastmasters family. Once we join a club, the people that we are surrounded with make us feel comfortable, make us feel welcome, and make us want to be our best. So now we have a role model. At the time when there was black and white TV and other small things for women to do, Helen had 2 children, a son and a daughter. And when they grew up and moved out of the house, guess what? She was bored. She was so busy when the children were growing up, she became bored and decided, I'm going to go out there and find some work to do. But when she decided to go out and look for work, she did have excellent skills. She had excellent communication and desires as any woman would, but she was a trailblazer. Her good friend, Eileen Hope from San Diego, and many Toastmasters may remember Eileen, said she was a trailblazer. She was a trailblazer for women in government. She was a trailblazer for women who were working and for women in Toastmasters. Little did we know that a young lady, quiet but not too shy, was born on May 17th, 1926, in Pender, Nebraska. She was a quick study, and she skipped 2 grades in elementary school, which was a one-room schoolhouse in San Diego. She graduated from Pender High School at 15. She became a teacher at 16 after passing Nebraska certification exams. She married a young man named John Joseph Blanchard in 1946. And then she moved to San Diego community 10 years later. So after her kids moved out and finished school, she said, I was bored and I found that working for the US Navy gave me an interesting opportunity. The interesting opportunity was shamefully disregarding any woman who wanted to join their Toastmasters club. She had to prove herself over and over and over again. So she had a neighbor tell her, well, maybe you could try this organization inside of your company called Toastmasters. When she went to the Toastmasters meeting, they told her she was not allowed. She was not put off by that. She said, okay, I understand. This happens, especially in those days. But when there were limits to women, she found herself saying, I think I'm going to do something about that. And so she went to the meeting, made her peace, and left. She made a remarkable impression on the people that she visited. And 2 weeks later, the president of that club said, our club thinks we would like to invite you to join our club, but we're going to have to disguise your name. So they came up with the letter H Blanchard. And pretty soon, Toastmasters International got nosy. Well, who's H? What does H stand for? So the club had a contest on what should be Helen's first name in this male-only organization. And they came up with Homer. So she went by Homer Blanchard and then became an anomaly of disguise. People said, well, what does Homer look like? And what is he doing? They had to fess up and come up with, well, we're going to have to spill the beans and tell the truth. Imagine how Helen felt when she was completely exposed by her real name and she became Helen Blanchard, proud to give her full name as a woman in Toastmasters. It did not take long for her to make her mark in Toastmasters. She was supervisor of a department that was, of course, all men, and they were scientists and engineers. And the name of her department, can anyone guess? It had to do with the, let me see if I could look it up. It was scientists and engineers working on the torpedo guidance system. Now imagine a female in charge of torpedoes. I bet that brought a big laugh to those when they realized she was not going to back down or be shy about doing what she loved to do. Now, here we are at a point where I would like to have her speak about her journey in Toastmasters when she visited District 12, and you will see her speak. Thank you, Rob, for putting this video together.
85 years ago at YMCA, 2 dozen men heard speeches about the power of communication, the power of public speaking for the ordinary person. I wonder what they would think if they would have known this spun off and rippled out to affect 4 million people in 85 years. We never know what that ripple effect, one meeting or one idea or one principle might have. Of course, Dr. Snow got a glimpse of this before he passed in 1965. He received keys to cities in the United States, in Europe, and in Canada. And then he had to turn that first state postword, the first World Headquarters building in San Antonio. But I think even he would be surprised at the growth in the last 44 years. Often we don't realize but the results might be because of our. Little did I know is to find out what Toastmasters was all about. And many of you have heard my story, but for those of you who haven't, I want to tell you how I got to join. As was said in the introduction, I worked for the Navy Research and Development Center. Now, this was during the Cold War in the late 60s, early 70s. The Navy had just developed a new torpedo, and in testing the torpedo, found out that it's not the carbon. At first, they thought it was the guidance system in the torpedo. Then they found out it was the sonar systems where the ship. So offshore facilities in both the Atlantic and Pacific were set up in order to test the sonar system of the ships. I was given the task of having a database with all of that data so that I could correlate it and do testing with it and send it to the Navy Department for their observation of how the fleet is going. In order to do that, these test ranges had to take the data in the same way that the same way and report the same way. So we could get out to those ranges and tell the male engineers how to do it. Now, in the 1970s, a woman did not go out to train male engineers. And I'll tell you, that was rough. I knew my business, but I had to prove myself over and over again. So one day I was reading our newsletter, Center newsletter, and I read the headline, Joint Toastmasters and Present the Conference. This is exactly what I need. And so without reading further, if I would here, I would see the slogan of the day, being on the move. But instead I called, and of course I was told that it was all male organization, but they were sorry that I couldn't join. So I accepted that. And then I had a phone call about 2 weeks later saying that the president had discussed this at the club, and the members had voted to accept me as a member. I didn't really change the meeting, I didn't want to be it, and I really hesitated about even going. But then I thought, I have to take my just go and see what all of this is all about, see if they can help me. I went, of course, when I saw the program in action, I joined. They sent my application to the world headquarters as Paige Blanchard. And we were kind of surprised when the world headquarters came back and said to be the first name for Paige Blanchard. I remember the president turned to me and said, Helen, what male name would you like? Yeah, I looked at what I did. So now I was mulling over male names and rejecting them. I never said, why don't we name it? I had given my icebreaker so that membership knew something about me. And the winner wrote a delightful little story about the fact that my maiden name is Alice. I like Gold Navy. I would appreciate it. And I think you mentioned something about Helen and Troy. So why not Gold? Until November of 1971, and women were allowed in federal clubs. And of course, in August of 1973, women were allowed in all of those clubs to change their bylaws to them. That was my entrance into the Toastmasters. Believe me, when I gave that first speech for communication and leadership manual, the icebreaker, I had no idea at all that I would be breaking the ice in the leadership manual. I had no idea of that ripple effect. So I would be helping to open the Toastmaster membership door so they dedicated and capable members. As I said, this was 1970, 5 years after Dr. Stanley left us. I so wish I could have the honor of knowing him. However, I did transfer many men who did know him. One was Roy Red, that's the Roy. We worked together in a few situations, and he used to tell me about the good old days. Where the men had the meeting in the parlor, and the women were in the kitchen baking cookies and making coffee. We served them after their meeting. He was always great about so much. But to the men that I knew who knew Dr. Stanley, I became so impressed with this gentleman. He gave us this remarkable organization. And he might have followed the path that so many of his others did, Carnegie, and made this a for-profit business. But instead, he gave us all this tremendous gift. So here we are celebrating 85 years of Memory Club number 1. I was thinking of the ripple effect that this club's had on its hundreds of members through the years. As you think the power generated because of that meeting so many years ago, that is also aware of our actions that might have ripple effects. When we serve as a role model, when we ask for tenant during our program, all of these have ripple effects that we have years. In closing, I want to congratulate the members of this very, very special club. Because over the years have helped so many look toward their full potential. May you continue to serve as an inspiration to all of us as you continue to add those remarkable 85 years of service.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ross, for bringing that.
Tom, let
Oh,
me add,
ah,
let me add something, Tom. I want to say that
okay.
Helen gave a remarkable presentation, and I hope that you were able to hear it, even though it sounded a little bit muddy, but she was a remarkable woman. So from a quiet, small town, one-room classroom in Nebraska to becoming the international president, first female in Toastmasters, she did a remarkable jump. Do you see the jump that she made in her life and how we could do the same thing with her as our guide, with her as our mentor and someone we look up to? I think that we could say yes, male and female. We could say yes to what Toastmasters can do. And Greg Scott and Jeremiah Lyle have comments in the chat about her book, Breaking the Ice. I think that when she made a general statement that I'm not trying to be a remarkable person, a well-known person. I am happy to stay in the background, but her legacy that she left behind left this organization with something we'll never forget. Because when she passed away on May 17th, on May 11th, I should say, she was 86 years old. And that was in the, what year was that? That was 20, somebody, Greg Scott might remember. I didn't even write it down. But I think that when she passed away, she left a legacy, and her children passed on all the information that we have in front of us. Remember Helen Blanchard. Remember Homer. Because if you get out of Toastmasters, all you can get out of Toastmasters, you'll never get out of Toastmasters. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Ross, for bringing that to us. You didn't mention one little secret. I'm going to tell you a secret on you, though, because one of the things that we have shared between us, and maybe everybody doesn't know, is that Roz, before she was a Toastmaster, she was a Toastmistress.
Yes, but Helen was not. Helen was
No,
not
no,
interested.
I know. My sexist joke about that was in the old days when we had Toastmasters had mistresses. But anyway, we will get on to. I did want to say one thing though. When I joined, they were women were not allowed in Toastmasters yet because I joined in 1968 and happened a few years later. But I actually brought in Club 1348 the first two women. And one of those was Barbara Dawson, who was a reporter for the Press Enterprise. And the other one was Jean Mansfield, a community activist who used those skills she learned in Toastmasters to go on and become elected the first woman city councilwoman for Riverside. So it was interesting. They both needed to come together to have the courage to come to this all-male organization and join. We welcomed them and they went on to good and wonderful things. Okay, with that, I am ready to get on to some more of our program, and we will pass this on over to the person who gets most of the credit for my years becoming distinguished, Sandy Molino, who was not only took over most of the role and was Division Governor of the Year that year when she was her Division Governor. Sandy.
Thank you. Well, it's my pleasure tonight to introduce a friend who's going to be doing his qualifying speech. He's a digital marketing specialist in social media and web strategy. He's an event planner. He joined Toastmasters to overcome his fear of public speaking, like many of us did. And he completed 2 distinguished Toastmasters in the last 6 years. Today, Bond is going to share his running experience and how it has helped him navigate life, the challenges after facing personal loss. It transformed his grief into resilience, pushing boundaries and redefining success and inspiring others to do the same. Please welcome my friend, Bond Wang.
Well, okay. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Sandy. Summer 2023. I remember it was late summer and a late afternoon. I was walking in a park. I was wearing a pair of slippers. As I was strolling aimlessly, suddenly a panic attack hit me. I still remember what happened at that moment. My face turned burning hot, my breath shortened, and my chest tightened. Without thinking, I started to run. My slippers could barely hold as I was running, but I couldn't stop. I worked my legs. They were totally on their own, scrambling to chase one after another. I ran around the park for 1 round, which is about 1 mile, then the second round, then the third. Finally, I ran for 7 miles in a pair of slippers. I stopped because my legs couldn't move anymore. I was soaked in sweat, gasping for air. And for a moment, I thought I was dying. That was my summer 2023. If you still remember summer 2023 in South California, it was a record-breaking hot summer. However, I didn't feel a lot of heart waves. Instead, I felt a lot of bone chills. Early that summer, I lost my wife to cancer. It was a 7-year battle. We finally lost it. We did. Then a couple weeks later, our only child, my son Jack, went away to college. You see, in the span of a few weeks, my house went from being a home to an empty nest. Silence there, deafening. Then the grief, depression, anxiety, They all crept in like shadows, lingering in every corner of the house. Soon I knew it. Something was wrong in myself. And I knew it. I have to do something. Either I will move on, or I will let the weight of grief drag me down. That was my summer 2023. And then the panic attack in the park. I ended up running for 7 miles in a pair of slippers. But although I was exhausted to death, suddenly I realized the stress, the anxiety that haunted me for months, they were all gone after the run. For the first time in months, I felt alive. So I knew it. It wasn't the way out that I was looking for. Coming back home, the first thing I did, dig out my running shoes. Then I started to running. How many of you are running too from the audience? I know there is a big one here in the audience. Fellow runners. We are running for whatever reasons. Whether it is an exercise for you or it's the outcome of a panic attack. I know, I got it once. It was no fun and nothing to brag about. Let's be honest. Compared to the weight lift zone in the gym, running isn't a super popular exercise. Some say running is boring, right? Sweaty, non-chatting. Runners, sometimes people come to gym just to chat, to socialize, but runners don't really talk when they are running. It's just too tough, they just can't. But some also say running is lonely. We are going to find out in a second. But firstly, a question. Do you know how long is it for a marathon? The crazy long distance. Anyone from audience, any idea?
6.2 miles.
That's right. Thank you, Edwin. But how long is 26.2 miles exactly? Well, let's put that in perspective. Every Monday night, I will drive from my home Riverside to the senior nurse house on Main Street in Corona for my Monday night Toastmasters meeting. Normally, I will drive for 40 minutes. Pretty bad traffic at that time. And Google Maps shows the distance, 18 miles. What it means is that if I were running a marathon, I would have passed that senior nurse house on Main Street, Corona, in running. And I still have 8 miles to run. It's really long, isn't it? But today, I'm not going to talk about marathon. Maybe it's too crazy. Sorry, Edwin. I know you are running the ultra marathon. Maybe that is totally another universe. But instead, today, I'm going to talk about half marathon, 13.1 miles. And mind you, half marathon is also an official race in many running events. But don't be scared by all these numbers. Today, I'm not going to juggle these numbers for you. Instead, I'm going to talk about how running has helped me navigate life challenges. Firstly, I wasn't new to running. I guess my first attempt of running went back to 2015. At that time, I was a weightlifting guy in the gym. You have seen these guys, right? Working out of the gym with pumped chest, arms, maybe egos. Sometimes we thought we build muscles, but oftentimes turns out we build more body fat. My doctor warned me about my weight. My knees wouldn't last for long if I couldn't lose pounds. So reluctantly, I started to run. But I never really loved running at that time. Then came 2017. Early that year, my employer went bankrupt. I lost my corporate job. A couple months later, my wife was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Middle class life, right? The life as we knew it and celebrated just crumbled overnight. I quit the gym and hit the running trail instead. What I wanted to escape the stress. With each step in the run, I wanted to bury fear, sorrow. You know, it worked. Dopamine spike. We all know that effect. I feel that short time of relief every time after I run. So I ran further, more often, and longer, faster. A couple months later, I completed the first half marathon run of my life. I did it in 2 hours, 10 minutes. Well, honestly, for people at my age, that number wasn't bad, especially for a beginner. And soon after that, my family got helped by our friends. My whole family moved to Baltimore East Coast for my wife's cancer treatment. That was a big move. For me, between my wife's appointments and the challenges to settle in a new land, I found running became my treatment. Oftentimes, I found myself circling around a lake nearby where we lived for hours. I like the feeling of being lost with my feet hitting the trail. I ran and ran. One day, just on a whim, I set a goal for myself. I wanted to complete a half marathon within 2 hours. You know, it wasn't a small challenge. I hit the trail right away and ran to the last of my breath. I clocked in at 2 hours, 2 minutes. Wow, it was so close. But I was happy because I was seeing my excitement for running was really building up. But soon after that, life took over again. Early 2019, my family moved again, this time South California. My wife signed up in an oncology clinic at the Riverside Community Hospital. And for me, among all these chaos moves, I ran less and less this time. Also because this hot weather in South California really killed my energy for running. And soon the pandemic hit. The whole world turned into survival mode. So running totally out of my life. And slowly, it became a distant memory. Then, summer 2023, the panic attack. This 7-mile run in a pair of slippers was really a struggle. But to my surprise, I realized after the run, it not only lifted the weight of my shoulder, but also it reignited my running passion. So 5 years later, I started running again. I was able to quickly build up my stamina, ran further and further. A couple weeks later, as I hit the mark of 10 miles, I said to myself, see, now I think your life is back. So naturally, I wanted to challenge half marathon again. You see, I still have this goal with me. I wanted to complete a half marathon within 2 hours. Well, returning after years away wasn't so easy. The first, not to mention, I was 5 years older. So my first 2 attempts, no surprise, they failed. What happened was my heart really wanted to keep going, but my knees, my legs, and my mind, they were all yelling at me. Stop. Hey, you, stop. These cramps, fatigue, and self-doubts, they all swirling around me, trying to pull me down. My solution, simple. I kept running. April 2024, I crossed the finish line of my marathon in 5 years. I did it 2 hours, 18 minutes. Well, much slower than years ago. But I was so happy. I said to myself, look, I think now you are back in the game. Did you know Riverside City hosts 2 half marathon races? Do you know what they are? We have some experts here. 2 races every year in Riverside. That's right. That's right. You are absolutely right. And Monday last year, 2024, was Mission Inn Run's 47th anniversary. It has got a long history. And since last year, I thought I found my rhythm of running. I signed up for both races. And October 2024, I completed the half marathon race in Mission Inn Run. I did it in 2 hours, 23 minutes. Apparently, it wasn't a great performance. I was so nervous. And I just couldn't breathe rightly. But that feeling throughout the race, unbelievable. You see the crowds that cheered you up all along the way, the fellow runners that surrounded you, the remarkable trails around Mountain Rubidoux in Riverside. I never got that kind of feeling while running along in the park. I really felt my energy for more races. Then January, this year, Citrus Heritage Run, I completed in 2 hours, 18 minutes. 5 minutes faster than the last one. But what's important this time was I wasn't so nervous anymore. So my mind was able to talk to myself. Did I tell you, runners don't really talk when they are running, but they talk to themselves. You know, this mental conversation is considered a good way to deal with mental fatigue when you are running for long distance. I still remember when I was running, I was really struggling. Then I saw the sign of 10 miles right ahead of me. Right in the moment, my mind asked me this question. Hey, you, why are you doing this? Did you know, according to studies, this question is one of the common questions that many runners would ask themselves when they reach the peak of their fatigue. Why am I running? I remember my mind was racing really fast, searching for answers to this question. My memories went back to many, many moments over the past years. And we have all these joyful moments, but also there were moments when my wife's condition got so bad. I saw this profound hopelessness. And there were moments when I fought with my teenager son. And there were moments when I myself struggled so much. Oh, I really struggled with my career since my last corporate job. All these years, I just don't know why. My job search, brutal, and went nowhere. I came to the point where I believe no matter how hard I try, life offers me no finish line. But when it comes to running, you see, the finish line is always there, visible and guaranteed. All you need to do is simple, run, just run. You know, I need this finish line. It gives me the sense of success that I hadn't seen for so long in my life. I guess that's the reason that I'm running. Another reason, also important, running is my way of grieving. Since my wife's passing, I saw it. I was on the verge of going downhill. I didn't know what to do. That was until summer 2023, the panic attack. It struck me awake. It must be God's hand. That running came to me, saved me through a panic attack. Since then, running pushed me further and further, step by step, mile by mile, and finally, it got my life back. Here is my final thought on running. For me, running isn't just an exercise for you. For me, it's a therapy. It's a fight against grief and panic attack. My life in general, uncontrollable. But it doesn't mean that I cannot win. At this time, running is the one thing that I can still conquer and I can still win. I need this win. I really do. It's a reminder that I am still alive and I can still win. Dear friends, you think it's hard to win in life, right? We are all entitled to think that way. But let's not forget, there are many, many small wins in life that we can still accomplish, we can still celebrate. Whether it is finish reading your first book, or make your first pull-up in the gym, or just set out for an adventure that you have been waiting for so long. For me, my small win, simple. I will put on my running shoes, step outside, then never look back. Never stop. Run. Just run. I think I will find my finish line. Thank you.
Yay! Woohoo!
Come up and run the evaluation.
Really?
Oh, yes.
You give me back.
Okay, so we have a number of QSs in the room, but we also have qualified speakers online. And at this point, we ask them to make some comments and suggestions. And whatever they wish to say about this. Those online will put their votes, I guess, either in chat or Michael, I guess.
So online, you would submit your votes to Michael Ozier, but are there anyone online or in the audience that would like to comment on Bond's speech? Okay, we have someone in the audience. Okay, we'll do Charles first.
Bond, this is the second time I've heard that speech. I was very impressed with your delivery tonight. You covered some material tonight I did not hear the first time I heard the speech. The only thing I would add is that you need to have a little bit more voice inflection, a little bit more enthusiasm, but the speech was very well delivered and you covered a lot of information. Thank you for the speech.
Thank you, Charles. And another one online was Jeremiah.
Hey, Bond. Bond, I really appreciate it. I'm not for sure why my camera's not working. There's a lot of things I really liked. I really enjoyed your development of the story. Your personal stories and your personal talk about it really connected with the audience. And the one thing I loved is you didn't rush that. You gave yourself a lot of vulnerability, but not rushing it allowed us to kind of feel that emotion and kind of really go with you in that process. And you really developed that beginning story as well in regards to running in the park with your shoes and everything. I thought that was also really good too. So I really appreciate that. And I really enjoyed it. I would agree with Charles, probably a little bit of vocal variety and everything would, I think, really kind of help accentuate this speech and help deliver it more. But this was very well done today. And I really appreciate you sharing and being so authentic today in your speech. Great job.
Thank you, Jeremiah. And let's hear from someone in the audience. Suzanne Leonard is here. You'll want to come down and use the microphone so online can hear you.
to be closer to Bond. Bond, beautifully delivered personal speech. And as you walked and used the real estate, it wasn't rushed, it was relaxed. I really liked your language in this story. You had great language and pauses. You didn't rush it at all. And I felt it was factual and yet deep for you at the very same time. You grab us always with personal stories, but you came back to there you were. You repeated that part. There you were in your slippers, running, running, running. And that caught you, and that visual, and you returned to it many times, never left you, and it kept threading the story forward. I really liked that, liked hearing your successes, liked the whole process and the mental conversation that we do have as runners and race walkers with, what are you doing out here? So thank you so much for this beautiful speech tonight, Vaughn. I really appreciated it.
Thank you. Online, I see Kimberly.
Good evening, everyone. And to you, Vaughn, what a great speech.
Right.
Truly enjoyed hearing you as I'm outside running, your fellow running community. You know, the thing I really loved is amazing storytelling. And you heard that over and over from all the other QSs that shared their experiences. I thought about how you took this very hard experience. I thought about the words from whether you use tragedy to triumph, from panic to purpose. I love alliterations and things to really bring that story to life. And you did it. You did it. Like they all said, look at opportunities for inflection in your voice. Look for opportunities, even though there's some, sad times in there. Weave in the joy. What I really loved is how you connected with everyone at the end. You said whether it's a book, whether it's something tremendous that you want to do, you can do it. I love that. And I think when we build the storyline in with everyone, that connection piece, because not everyone loves to run, we then buy them in. We get them into the story. You touch them in their heart, the emotion, you prick them because of that empty nest experience from your wife as well as your son. So overall, amazing experience. Look for some highs that you can go really high in the speech, bring that audience in, capture their hearts even more. Outstanding job. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. You know you are my inspiration, right?
Oh,
And
that's
you
so
are
sweet.
many others. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Bond. Great job. I really appreciated that speech.
I see Roz's hand up.
Yes, my buddy Bond. We are in a few clubs together and right now in one. And I think that when you held up your medal or medallion from the Mission Inn, I have one as well. It's a sense of accomplishment and not knowing everything that you were going through as you prepared for that run that you made, and just keep going forward at all the things that you've accomplished in your life. I truly admire you, and telling the story and weaving in personal experiences, the grief included. And now to see you giving your qualified speech, there is no doubt in my mind that you have what it takes to tell a tremendous story and inspire so many others to keep moving forward and run, just run. I love it. Thank you, Bond. Back to you.
Our accredited speaker.
You are an expert.
Bond, well done. I loved your speech. And you took us on that journey, as many people said, and you had some areas where there were some sad emotions, but you didn't make it to melancholy. You gave us a chance to experience that with you, but then also in the joys of as you push yourself. And each time you had a goal and you attempted and you didn't get it, you still weren't discouraged. You kept on going and you encouraged us to pursue our goals and dreams. And I really love that you took it, as Kimberly said, outside of the running world and for everyone else who has dreams and goals to pursue those as well. So I really did appreciate hearing your story.
Thank you. We're running out of time, but if someone wants to keep it really short, Sharon.
Yes, Bon, what a gorgeous speech. Thank you so much for that beautiful presentation. I want to dovetail on what Susan was saying earlier about the language that you used. In particular, what jumped out at me was how you kept your metaphor of running with slippers and running longer, faster, and so forth. And my favorite line was, no matter how hard I try, life doesn't offer me a finish line, but I can run. So you kept your thread of running, that metaphor, and it was beautiful. I encourage you to use the stage a little bit more purposefully because you only went side to side. And I would encourage you to think about going backwards and frontwards, just different ways, maybe even diagonal. So just play with that. But overall, I loved how vulnerable you were with your speech, and that really made me feel a connection to you, Bond. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you, Sharon.
One more,
Melinda.
very quick, Melinda, and that's the last.
It's my president.
Hi, Von. I'm so happy for you. You gave us your story. We felt your pain. We felt your struggles. You put that journey out there in the verbal process. And I want to congratulate you on going to the next level. Welcome to the qualified speaker. That's what I say. Go, Bond.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Bond. Excellent job. I'm so proud of you to be here as a qualified speaker.
Okay, I'm gonna have to step on Sandy and make her leave. So thank you for being here. And because we're running short, and I want to make sure it's time enough for our final speaker. Maybe we can put some words in the chat and they can be shared. But we need to make sure we get on to your those of you who have the yellow forms. You should have yellow forms to help give him some suggestions. They're in the back. And if you're a QS, make sure your vote gets in and gets counted and that sort of thing. We're going to make sure we have the collection of those votes. And I will share words with Bob later on. I didn't usually try to say something, but we want to make sure we have set aside a very special evening for our very special speaker. I won't call him because he started out here in District 12 and became a qualified speaker in District 12, and then went on and rose above all of us to become an accredited speaker, one of those recognized by International Toastmasters as an accredited speaker. So I was there when he went and got his accredited designation, and we were jumping up and down and cheering and all real happy. All right, while he's getting set up, I will have a chance to read a little bit of the prepared introduction. Our speaker tonight is a master in the advanced art of failure. In his early teens, he failed to win the vote of class president in a class of only 25 students. In his late teens, he failed to complete college, dropping out after only 2 years. In his early 20s, he failed in business twice. In his 30s, he failed to complete the Los Angeles Marathon, dropping out after only 3 miles. That sounds a little familiar. In his 40s, he failed as a wannabe real estate investor, losing everything he had, including the family home. In his 50s, he lost the 6th and final spot to compete for Team USA in the International 24-Hour Ultra Marathon competition by mere seconds. And now in his early 60s, he is the losingest 100-mile runner in the world. You're still here? With a speech titled, Your Extraordinary Gift. Please help me welcome you to Toastmasters at Speakers Bureau, our accredited speaker, and his each title, Your Extraordinary Gift. Are you ready, Ed? Okay, I think I dragged that out long enough to be able to make sure you had time to get set up. So.
Yes, I appreciate that, Tom.
Okay. You're in for something special. We have not had many in the history of Speakers Bureau 60-minute entire keynote addresses rather than the shorter, usually 20 minutes to a half an hour. That we do. So let's see. We'll just see if he can keep us entertained and educated and interested for 60 minutes. Your comments.
Yes, absolutely. Can you hear me now?
Well, I think you got a good one.
Oh, I can, yeah. Let's be honest. I wanted to really quickly do a couple of announcements from the district. Number one, our June CLI. Leadership Institute. First, we'll again be at the Alexander Hughes building, which we were just at for our spring conference. A wonderful event as chaired by our one and only 20 Jameson. So thank you so much for that. Additionally, we do have a new incentive program out in the first. So after the conference, we're handing out cards. If you haven't gotten them for your club, please let me know. I will get them to you. And the idea is to get in the most new members between now and the end of June. And we were incentivizing with some wonderful free, gift card to the Toastmasters shop so that your club can buy all the fun things that we like to use. So just a couple of announcements, and hope you guys have a wonderful rest of Speakers Bureau. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, big month. They do qualified speaker just last month. So she's there. And the program quality director for District 12. So we will be all there to help her to accomplish good things next year. And Ed, take it away.
At some point, you have to ask yourself, do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? All right, fellow Toastmasters, Tom, and any guests that we have, I apologize first off for not being PC, smoking a cigar and calling you a punk. But I believe in PC, in a different kind of PC. The PC I like to call positive coincidence, or as my grandma used to call it, a coinky-dink. Now, you might think of it as maybe being at the right place at the right time, or having the lucky stars line up, or even it's referred to as happy accidents. Well, I believe there are things, events that occur in our lives. We're in a certain place at a certain time, and if we can have a different mindset, and maybe it could be looked at as negative, but we change the way we process that event, it could turn out to be positive. I'm going to spend some time with you. I'm going to be walking and talking and sharing with you my story, mostly about walking and talking. So I have a question for all of you. Who taught you how to walk and talk? If you had to name someone, could you name the individual or individuals who taught you to walk? Let's your hands. If you could name those who taught you how to walk and talk. I see many hands that did not go up. You don't know who taught you how to walk and talk? Okay, well, that's okay because I don't know. I was placed in foster care at the age of 7 months, and I was bounced from home to home to home, and finally went to a home when I was 3.5 that eventually adopted me. I have no idea who taught me how to walk and talk. And as I thought about it, I really started to think, do we really need someone to teach something so simple as walking? It just seems to come natural to us. And talking, if we're around other people, we can hear what they're saying and start to mimic them. So I don't really know that an individual specifically taught me to walk and talk, but my life has become all about walking and talking. Now, I had a dream. And how many of you have had a dream as a child? You just wanted it so badly. When you went to sleep at night, you could feel it, you could taste it. You woke up in the morning. It was the first thought that came to your mind. Did you have that dream? I had that dream. I got a Christmas present, a Guinness World Record book. And I leafed through the pages and all these amazing world records. And that was my dream, to get in the Guinness Book of World Records. And then when I was 12, there was the Olympics, the 1972 Olympics. Mark Spitz was a swimmer. And if you are from that period of time, you know that he set a world record. He won 7 gold medals in swimming. And then 4 years later, 1976, my hero, Bruce Jenner. I wanted to grow up and be just like Bruce Jenner. Well, not become Caitlyn Jenner, but I think you get what I'm talking about. I wanted to be an athlete, a world recognized athlete. But here's the problem that I had. I didn't have the skill set Bruce Jenner had. He mastered 10 different sports, the decathlon. I didn't have upper body strength. I could barely put one foot in front of the other without tripping over my own 2 big feet. So I really had to give up that dream. But I started dreaming about maybe I could run a marathon. And then I learned about this guy named Boston Billy. Boston Billy won the Boston Marathon year after year after year. Boston Billy was my new hero. I want to grow up to be just like him. And so when I was 17, I trained every day, went out running. A friend of mine also, the school I went to, the high school, we went out running together. We trained to run a marathon. And our senior year, we both ran a marathon together. We didn't finish together, but when we finished, we took this picture. Now, I'm the handsome, shirtless guy that is skinny and has hair on the top of his head. That was the good old days. This is my very first marathon I ran in 1980 at the age of 17. And it was a pretty fast marathon. It was a 3-hour, 10-minute marathon. Not so bad for my first time out. Now, I only had to shave about an hour off to become Olympic level, but there was time. I was only 17. So a month later, I ran another marathon. And that was 2 marathons at the age of 17. When I was 18, I ran 3 marathons. I was getting faster and faster. I was on my way to being that Olympic marathon runner, world record holder. And then I got distracted by the opposite sex. Now, I'm not going to blame a certain person in this room, but when I was 19, I was really no longer interested in pursuing that goal. I had a whole new goal to pursue. And I am proud to say that in July, we'll celebrate 43 years of marriage. So as life went on and I started a business, we started having children, you know, at some point I had this nagging thought that I wanted to go back and run a marathon again. And so in my early 30s, I decided this was the time, the 1994 Los Angeles Marathon. Signed up for the marathon, but I was busy, work every day, the kids, 4 kids at that point, and I just never seemed to have time to go out and train. No worries, I had done 5 marathons when I was a teenager. I mean, I could knock this thing out of my sleep. But as we got closer and closer to marathon day, I started getting a little concerned because maybe I should do a little bit of running. So I started to go out and run a little. And then I decided, well, you know, you've got to do some of those long runs as Bond had shared with us. So I did a couple long runs and I wasn't prepared for it. And my knees were really not ready for that. Well, I had the marathon. I signed up for it. I paid good money. So I showed up. The marathon starter gun went off. Actually, it was a countdown. It was Muhammad Ali counting down. And as soon as he got to 1, we were off and running. Running that first mile. Not a problem. I was going pretty quick, about a 7-minute mile. running that second mile, getting warmed up, still at a 7-minute mile, but my knees were starting to hurt a little bit. And then that third mile, man, my knees were really aching, and I had to start doing maybe a little bit of walking, and then I can run a little bit, and then some walking, and then some running. And it wasn't far past mile 3 that I knew I couldn't complete the marathon. 26.2 miles, as Bond shared with us. I was only 3 miles in. And so I stopped. Now, you might go your whole life and meet people who run marathons. About 1 in every 200 Americans will run a marathon. The finish rate in most marathons is around it's around 90, 1 to 2% would be terrible. It's around 98, 99%, which means 1 to 2% do not finish. But I bet you can go your whole life and you will never find another person who stopped running a marathon at mile 3. And that was me. So that was it. Yeah, my marathon dreams were over. And I talked to someone, it was a few days after this had happened, and I was telling him about the situation and how miserable I was, because imagine that you're in this race and you stop. Well, you have to still get back to your car. And that was 3 miles back at the start line. And now I'm walking, and there's thousands and thousands of people that are still going that direction towards the finish line. I'm going back to my car. That was one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. Got back to my car, went home, and as I was saying, I met a gentleman a few days after that, and we were talking about this event. And he said, you know, Ed, it might be that all those marathons you did as a kid, maybe you ruined your knees. You know, you ran on the street, a lot of hard miles. And I thought about that, and I thought, you know what? He's probably right. And that little thought went to my little mind and germinated. So the point eventually where I decided I would never run a marathon again in my life. I ruined my knees. That dream was over. Now, sadly, to this day, I can't remember who that person was. I don't know if it was another marathon runner. I don't know if it was a coach, someone in the medical field. I have no idea. But his message to me was powerful enough that it stuck with me, and I was never going to run again. 2 years later, I decided I was going to be a real estate mogul. And I started learning about real estate investing, getting all the information that I could. I went to seminars, read books, and I decided this is something that I could do. And so the real estate market was fertile, and anyone who wanted to invest, all you had to do is be able to fog up a mirror and they'd give you money. That was easy. So I started buying some properties. Now, the properties that I bought were properties that were fixer-uppers. You put some effort into them, you fix them up, they appreciate in value, some sweat equity, and you sell it for profit. And you go and you do it again. It all made sense. I was on my way. And this is in 2007. Now, if you know about the real estate market around that time, 2007, 2008, what happened to that market that was just taking off like a rocket? It came down with a crash. Unfortunately for me, my house of cards was built on speculation, and everything collapsed. All of my properties that I had, I ended up losing. Now, that's not so bad. That's what happens sometimes when you take risks. But if you take a risk on your own personal assets, and you take a risk by taking all the money out of the equity in your own personal home, that is not smart. Now, eventually I had to tell my wife that all the investments that we made, we lost them, and she was aware of that. I buried my head in the sand. I didn't want to deal with it, but I had to. But the worst experience that I had was when there was a knock on the front door. And there was the sheriff's officer with a default notice. We were losing our home. Now, my job as a husband, as a father, is to provide for my family, to be the protector, to provide a roof over their head. it wouldn't have been so bad if my children were all younger because we could move to their house and we could say, hey guys, we're going to move. It's going to be fun. But my kids were teenagers and they were a little bit too smart to have dad pull the wool over their eyes. So I had to have a serious conversation with them and I had to tell them that dad had messed up really badly. And of course, we did lose our home. Now, it wouldn't have maybe happened if I'd have kept working as much as I should have, but because I was in such a state of depression, I wasn't working, our business suffered, and everything just seemed to fall apart. It got to a point to where I thought the best thing I could do for my family was to check out. See, I had over $2 million of life insurance, and if I somehow just maybe was going too fast around the Ortega Highway, one of the corners, and just kind of went off the edge, no one would be the wiser. My wife would get that insurance money. She could save the home, continue to live the lifestyle she was used to. The kids would all be fine. Luckily, someone saw that that was not the best way to go. And of course, that would be my lovely bride. She knew I was having difficulties. I didn't share with her how bad. I didn't share with her my suicidal ideations, but she knew that I needed to get some attention, some medical help. And so she got me to go see a psychiatrist. Remember I talked about earlier, those happy accidents, those positive coincidences, being at the right place at the right time. Happened to be the psychiatrist that I saw was a marathon runner. Actually, he had ran the Boston Marathon a few times. And when we started to talk and I told him my story, he understood where I was coming from and understood my passion for running that I used to have. And he encouraged me, go back out and start running again, Ed. I said, well, Dr. Murphy, I can't. My knees are ruined. I ruined them years ago. I can't run anymore. He said, well, Ed, then go out and walk. Now, let me tell you about walking. I grew up in a time, 1980s, when running a marathon meant running a marathon. If you walked, even a few steps, how dare you call yourself a marathon runner? Go home. You see, that's the mentality back in those days. In fact, to run the Boston Marathon, you had, as a male, you had to qualify with the 2-hour, 50-minute marathon. That was it, across the board, 2 hours and 50 minutes. And of course, to do that, you'd have to run every step of the way. So I was not really keen to the idea of walking, but the doctor suggested, Bill, Ed, you really need to go out and do some walking. I'm going to give you some medication that you need. And I want you to do meditation also. You need to exercise every day. And why don't you go out and start walking? So I did. Went out and started to walk around the neighborhood. Not so bad. After walking a few weeks, I decided, well, maybe I could run a few steps and walk. Did that. Wasn't so bad. And then I started running a few more steps and eventually got to where I could run the whole time I was out and was able to run a couple of miles. I came home and talked to my lovely bride. I said, honey, I think I can run a marathon. Now, concerned for me and what I'd gone through, she said, well, remember what happened last time? I said, yeah, I know, but I didn't train last time. And I think if I train properly, I can actually complete it. Now, I need to go back just a little bit. There was a time when our family decided we would do a marathon, and we walked it. Now, did that count as a marathon? No, not in my mind, but it actually did count. In fact, it was a great experience. I actually got to cross the finish line with my 2 middle children. This is 8-year-old Andrea, 9-year-old Ethan. You can see my date here, it's 2000. And you might think, well, Ed, there you go. You did a marathon. That's the finish line, by the way. You can see the clock, just a little portion of it, 8 hours and 45 minutes. Again, we walked the whole thing. But it was a marathon. We got finishers' medals. But in my mind, that didn't count. That's not marathons. You run marathons. But 6 years later, after that, started doing the investing and things fell apart. And then in 2009, I decided, well, why not try it again? And I did, and I completed the marathon. And then I started running more marathons. And I found that, hey, I like this. This is actually pretty fun. But then there was that goal that I had. Remember the goal I had? I wanted to be in the Olympics. I wanted to set a world record. Well, now I'm in my mid 40s. That's just no way possible. But at least I could run and enjoy the sport. I started running more and more marathons. A year later, my daughter, after I started running marathons, my daughter wanted to do a marathon with me, this daughter. And by the way, she was 8 years old. And there were people who said, that's just wrong. You forced a little 8-year-old girl and a little 9-year-old boy, you forced them to go run a marathon. No, I didn't force them. We joined a program called the Lowman and the Lopers, and it was a 7-month training program that we went through. So we were prepared when we showed up. But people had said things to me that weren't so nice. And I remember hearing a comment that, you know, what kind of dad are you? You probably just ruined your poor daughter's growth plates. You know, and it's really sad that I did, because she wanted to do the marathon with me 10 years after this, just to sort of celebrate the 10 years. And well, the poor thing, she only grew to be 5'11". Now, you might notice from this, she said, Dad, I want to go to the LA Marathon again. It's been 10 years since I did it with you when I was 9, and Ethan had an injury, so he couldn't do it. And I said, well, yeah, that'd be great, except for I'm not able to run. I'd actually gotten an injury, it was a tibia stress fracture, and I was in a walking boot. And she said, well, if you want to walk it, I'll walk it with you. And I said, well, I think maybe I can walk it in maybe around 6 hours, I think. And she said, sure, why not? Let's do it. So we did. Now, when we went to get our, it's called the bib, race bib. It's a number that you wear. This happened to be in 2010. This is her senior year graduating. And out of over 20,000 entrants in the marathon, randomly, guess what number she got? Well, you can see it on her shorts, 2010. And I got, of course, 2011. So we felt this is fate. We need to do this. And we did the marathon. We're at the finish with our finishers' medals in that boot. Well, once I did the marathon in that boot, and by the way, the shirt says Marathon Maniac. There's a club of people who are insane about running marathons. I joined that club. Once I ran the marathon in the boot, I thought, well, I can do more marathons in the boot. And I started doing more, just walking them. Now, remember, there was a time when walking, for me, was wrong in a marathon. You just couldn't do that. But I started walking them and found out that, you know, it's still a fun event. It's still challenging, and it still counts. I looked. The medal they give you, it doesn't say walk marathon. It just says marathon. And I met someone in one of my marathon walks, and he had convinced me that I should start doing 100-mile races. And so I did. I did 100-mile race. Actually, before I'd gotten injured, but a year later, I had this injury, and I thought, well, maybe I can walk 100 miles in the boot. And so it was 1 year after I had ran my first 100-mile race, I was walking my first 100-mile race. And you can see that trusty boot. Well, there I am out on the course, and this is in Riverside, Vaughn. This is a horse facility called Sexton Ranch. You can see the orange grows in the background. And by the time the 24 hours were up, I had actually completed 102 miles, still in the boot. Now, when you run a 100-mile race, they give you a belt buckle. Unfortunately, this race didn't have belt buckles, so we got this little plastic goat on a lanyard. But hey, to me, it was good enough. Well, now, for me, this is almost going full circle. At one point, running marathons was all that really mattered. Walking them didn't count. And I had just completed 100 miles, 102 miles in under 24 hours and walked the whole way. So I knew I had a new sport I could do. I could walk and run marathons and 100-mile races. I started running more 100-mile races once I got the boot off, and ran more and more. In fact, in 2010, 2011, I actually was attempting to break a world record. Now, I wasn't going to run the fastest marathon. That was just out of the question. But I met someone named Yolanda Holder who held the world record with a guy from, Yolanda's from Corona, and there's a guy from Texas, Larry Macon. They had both each separately ran and walked 106 marathons in one single year. Well, I thought, I can maybe do that. And it's a world record. Maybe I can complete that. So I started running every marathon I could, every weekend, doing 2 marathons, sometimes 3 marathons. And I also was doing ultra marathons. So I knew that I could show up at an ultra and do a marathon distance and then get a different bib number and do another marathon distance. And I could add them up that way. So at the end of 2011, I ran a race that's very iconic. It's called the Badwater 135. Now, Badwater 135 is only 135 miles, and it's only going through this place that few people heard about called Death Valley, and it's only done in the middle of July on purpose to be the hottest time of the year. In fact, it's called the toughest foot race on the planet. And that was my finish of a 1-year goal of running as many marathons and ultra marathons as I could. And it was number 135, a world record. I'd finally done it. I had my world record. Now, there's a little problem with world records and Guinness. You see, Guinness has these really detailed rules that you have to follow. One being that if you're doing an event that has multiple parts to it, like 135 different races, you have to get every single race notarized, and you have to have an official from the local town sign that you've done that. I would need to do that 135 times, and I didn't. So people asking, well, was it a Guinness World Record? No, it wasn't Guinness. No, it wasn't a Guinness World Record. But after that, I started running more 100-mile races, and I found that there was something that you could do called the most 100-mile races in a year. Someone had done that, and so I decided to do that. And in 2014, I set out and ran 41 in 1 year. It was a new world record. Now, after that, I thought, I've experienced quite a few things. I've had some good races, and I think I have a story that I could share, and I'd like to start speaking more. Now, I had joined this little organization back in 1989 when I was in my late 20s, a little club called the Toastmasters. And as Rod had mentioned, and I'll paraphrase a bit, but when you've got everything you can from Toastmasters, it's okay to leave. That's not what she said, but I'm just using some ed interpretation of that. And so after a year of being in Toastmasters, I had everything that I could get from Toastmasters. There was nothing more they could teach me, and I went on my way and did other things. But in 2015, I thought, that Toastmasters group, they taught me some good things about speaking, and maybe I could go back and learn a few more things. So I joined Toastmasters in 2015. And in 2016, I had the opportunity to compete in an international speech contest. Well, I like to compete in running, so I thought, why not compete as a speaker? And so I did in 2016. And when I competed in my local club, great speech, and I landed that speech in 7 minutes and 37 seconds. Now, if you know about the speech contest, it's 5 to 7 minutes with a 30-second grace period either end. That means 7:37 is 7 seconds over. The club that I was in was a new club, and they didn't realize that you don't even have to have a speech contest. If there's no one that wants to compete, the club can just assign it to an individual. Well, no one wanted to compete, but they decided, well, I wanted to be in the contest. So we have to put a contest on because we have one person. And so my club and I thought that was it. But then I talked to someone who was quite active in the Toastmasters in the speech contest arena, Cindy Carpenter. And she said, Ed, you can just join another club, find another club that maybe doesn't have a speaker for the contest. They're not putting him in forward, and see if they'll let you represent them. I found a club and they said, yeah, come on. Fantastic Communicators, the name of that club. They said, we'd love to have you represent us. So I represented them and went to my speech contest. I gave a great speech. I made it through the area contest, went to the division contest, gave a great speech, and I got second place. I was beat by a scorpion named Sting. Now, those of you who may have been in that or at that contest in 2016, you maybe don't even remember the story of the scorpion named Sting. Well, I remember it because it stung when I didn't win that division contest. That's all right. Every year they have a new contest. So 2017, I entered the contest. Now, there's an interesting thing that happened between 2016 and 2017. I was getting more and more involved in a part of Toastmasters called Speakers Bureau. And I learned that they have a designation called, what is it called? Qualified Speaker. And I learned that if you attended 5 meetings and you completed your Competent Communicators Manual, back then we had those, that you could actually apply and get up and speak and become a qualified speaker. And I did that in 2016. It was November of 2016, right here on this very stage. And I made a sort of a challenge to everybody in the room about running a marathon. I said, if you want to complete a marathon, if you come see me at the end of this speech, I will coach you for free. At this point, I was actually getting paid to coach. I will coach you for free. And I had a few people that saw me at the end and wanted to take me up on that. Karen Lucas was one of them. She might even be, she's very active on Speakers Bureau. I don't know if she's here with us today, but she was one of them. So I coached these individuals. And our marathon was the 2017 Los Angeles Marathon. One of the women that I coached, who was a Toastmaster, was, oh, let me see if I can find a picture. I think I've got it. There it is. Okay. This woman right here, and she recruited her friend. This is the finish line of the marathon. Now you might be wondering, well, Ed, I see those 2 women. I don't see you. I see Darth Vader there in the middle. Well, that was actually me. You see, she challenged me. They had the Guinness World Record people there to verify world records, and she was going to run as a character from the play Hamilton. And she challenged me. She said, Ed, why don't you run and get a world record? Run as a character. So I thought, well, how about if I run as the jester? Because that's what I do. I run as a jester. I have a jester hat and a court jester outfit. But I looked up the records in Guinness and found out that there was a guy who had ran as a jester, and he had the world record for the fastest marathon as a jester, and it was under 3 hours. That was out. I was not going to be able to compete against that. So I thought, well, what else could I do? Well, there's the Joker card, and that's sort of like a jester. So I got this Joker card outfit. With Guinness, you submit your goal, your world record goal, and they have individuals that will look at it and decide whether it's worthy of a Guinness World Record. They got back to me and they said, no, we don't think running as the Joker really is something that we would give a Guinness World Record to. But the person who sent me the email said, why don't you run as a character from Star Wars? Okay, that makes sense. She said, we've never had anybody run as a character from Star Wars. And as long as you can do it in under 5 hours, you can get a Guinness World Record. There's my opportunity to get in the Guinness World Record books. So I went to Party City. Now you have to realize that this is in February, so Party City is really bare bones at that point. And I thought, well, let's see, I could see if I can find a Han Solo costume, or maybe a Luke Skywalker, or maybe one of the stormtroopers. They had only one Star Wars character costume, and that was Darth Vader. Now here's one of the rules with Guinness. If you're going to run in a costume, you have to be in the costume the whole 26.2 miles. Now, what I didn't know when I got this costume is, especially with this face mask, that it was hot. And a couple of times I got so warm that I actually needed to remove it and cool myself down. But if I did it on the course, certainly if someone saw me that was an official, or if they took a photo of me, I'd be disqualified. So I actually had to go off course, take it off, pour some oil on my head, cool down a little bit, and then get back on course and then continue running. And I still had to do it all within 5 hours. I did. I got it done within 5 hours. And by the way, I had sent them a picture of my Darth Vader costume, and they said, yep, that'll work. So I was on my way. Now, when I sent them the picture and I said, all right, guys, I'm ready. I want to get my Guinness World Record. They sent me back an email. They said, no, we're looking at your shoes, and those aren't Darth Vader shoes. Now, the sponsor of this race, one of the main sponsors, was Skechers. These were actually a pair of Skechers shoes. They were black. They weren't running shoes. And there's no way I could find Darth Vader boots. They didn't sell them. And so I got disqualified. I did not get my Guinness World Record. But I had a good story. So the contest was just a few weeks later. I actually qualified for my club. This is early 2017, March of 2017. So I was going to the area contest, and I decided I'm going to change my speech. I'm going to go as Darth Vader. I did. I went as Darth Vader, had my mask on and my outfit. When I came out, sort of like the Clint Eastwood, Luke, I am your father. And then went on to talk about the event and with the group of people that I had coached, and I took off the outfit. It was a good speech. It was on time. I knew I had it in the bag. Now, there are 5 speakers that spoke in that contest. One young lady, bless her heart, she froze. She wasn't able to get through her speech very well. So we knew that she was not really in competition. And then so that was 4 people that were left. And so, as you know, if you've done a contest or seen one, that they announced the top 3. They announced 3rd place. They didn't announce my name for 3rd place. You know what that meant? I'm getting 1st or 2nd place. They announced 2nd place. It was not my name. You know what that meant? I won that contest. And they announced Edwin Eddinghausen. Well, that's what I heard, but they didn't announce Edwin Eddinghausen. They announced a woman that beat me with the story about being behind the curtains of a play. She won. I lost. I didn't even get 2nd or 3rd place. After the contest, there were people that were going congratulating those who had placed, and they even congratulated the poor young lady who kind of froze. But I didn't get any congratulations, and I'm just sort of licking my wounds and not very happy with myself. And I did remember, though, that the contest chairperson was a woman named Margaret Hope, which wasn't really significant, except for on her name tag, there were 2 letters, AS. Now, I'd heard about AS, accredited speaker. I never met one. District 12 didn't have an accredited speaker. Cheryl Roush would sometimes visit District 12. Other people would visit District 12. And in fact, Dr. Hope she was from Canada. She was a professor that was a snowbird down for the period of time there. And so I talked to her afterwards, and I said, wow, I'm really impressed. I've never been able to meet an accredited speaker. Someday, I'd love to be able to become an accredited speaker. And I can't now, but someday that'd be a cool thing. I'd love to have that. And she said, well, Ed, do you speak? I said, I do. Do you speak for a living? I do. I actually do CPR seminars. She said, how long are your seminars? I said, they're about an hour and a half. And they pay you? And they pay you how? Well, I teach for my specialty is medical and dental offices, and I teach the class. They give me a check when I'm done. So, well, that means you're a paid speaker. All right. Have you done at least 15 of those in the last 3 years? I do 15 a month. All right, Ed. Is there at least 20 people in your class? Well, not all of them, but definitely over 15 in 3 years. And is this outside of Toastmasters? Because you can't be speaking to Toastmasters groups that won't qualify. I said, yeah, it's outside Toastmasters. She said, Ed, you qualify. You should apply to become an accredited speaker. And so the next year, I did apply. And I went through the whole process, and I showed up in Chicago ready to give my speech. Now, we can go back to the contest, 2018. I was doing that speech contest, and I just ran a 48-hour race. I had done quite well at that race, actually. And the next day, I went to the contest, and I lost. I gave a good speech, but it wasn't fair. I'll tell you why it wasn't fair. That guy who beat me got up there, tall, built like an Adonis, a full head of hair, and gave a great speech. That guy's name was Rich Poetiski. All right. Talk about him a little bit more later. So I lost the contest, but I did go to the accredited speakers event, and I met for the dress rehearsal Thursday night. And they talked about our speech length, and I told Cheryl Roush, who was one of the sponsors of the event, I said, I've got my speech. It's a 22-minute speech because we had to give it a condensed speech. She said, Ed, that's too long. I said, no, I've watched some of the videos of other accredited speakers, and then they're like 20 minutes or more. She said, Ed, what time did they tell you your speech was supposed to be? 16 minutes. She said, Ed, are you a professional speaker? Yeah. Well, then shouldn't you come in on time? They're not going to disqualify you. It's not a timed event, but they're going to be watching their watches. And if you take that much time, I'm not sure you're going to get the accredited speaker. So that night, I stayed up all night. Now, Martha and I were blessed because Tom and Connie had a large room, and they had an extra queen size bed, and the hotel rooms there at the convention center were expensive. So we had the benefit of they allowed us to stay in their room. I did not sleep in my bed that night, the whole night. I went out to a hallway and started working on my speech. Trying to get it down from 22. Then I got it down to 20, to 19, to 18. I finally got all the way down to 16 minutes. So I was ready. Now, at this event, there were 5 different people that were attempting to become accredited speakers. At that point, there were 75 accredited speakers throughout the world. It's not that many, considering how long Toastmasters has been around and how many people have been Toastmasters. So it was my turn. I gave my speech, and I thought it was a pretty good speech. And then we had to wait. Similar to Bond, you have to wait till tomorrow to find out the results. We had to wait till the next day. And they called us in one at a time and talked to us and told us whether or not we had made the qualification, because we had other accredited speakers who were voting for us. And I got it. And they awarded me with one of these special pins here. I think I've got it. Oh, there it is right there. There are now 95 people. So since 2018, there have been 20 more people who have gotten the accredited speaker pin. 2 people are going to be going to the Philadelphia convention and attempting to become accredited speakers. So I became an accredited speaker. And I learned something about an accredited speaker designation. There are only 2 designations that you can get where, well, let me back up a little bit. There are there's one designation you can get that can be removed from you if you don't conduct yourself properly as a Toastmaster. And that is accredited speaker. So I have to be careful what I do and what I say, because I don't need someone to send into Toastmasters International, oh, that Ed Eddinghausen, I think you should pull his accredited speaker designation away. I don't think he's quite living up to our standards. So I'm always on my best behavior at Toastmasters. Outside of Toastmasters, it's a different story, but in Toastmasters. But there's also something that can happen in Toastmasters where you can be disqualified. You could be banned from ever competing again. It can happen. Now, I'm hoping it's going to happen, because this year I did the contest, the speech contest. I went to the area contest. I gave a great speech. I knew it was a first place speech. But guess who was also speaking that day? Rich Politiski. And sure enough, they announced second place. That was me, and Rich got first place. Now, those of you who do not know who Rich is, he actually won the speech contest, and it's going to represent our club going on to the regionals. Now, here's what I'm hoping for. See, when this happened, I sent Monday morning, because I was at a race that weekend. I was doing my 299th 100-mile race, and I found out that Rich had won. So I sent a letter or email to Toastmasters International. Now, I'm going to come back just a little bit and talk to you about what happened in 2019. In 2019, I gave a speech, and on the clock, I could see the clock at 7:30.46. 7:30.46, that's 7:30. But I was worried that I might get disqualified. So there's an opportunity that if you want to protest, you have to do it within a certain period of time, discreetly. And I said, look, I know it said 7:30.46, but I've actually been timing with some of the other events. And I remember we had someone that was competing in the table topics, and they came in at 2:30 point something, and we qualified them. So I'm just saying, I think I should qualify. Well, Angie Nett was the chief timer, and Angie Nett's been our district director before. And she said, no, it's 7:30, and it went over 7:30. So doesn't qualify. So I lost that because of disqualification. But I sent an email to Toastmasters International. I said, look, there's some little bit of ambiguity here. Is it 7:30.00 or is it 7:30.99? And they made a rule. And you can go look at the contest rules. It says any contest, that 30-second grace period goes to 30.99 from this point on. Now, of course, I lost, but I think I did something good for the next guy that comes up and is within that margin of a second that otherwise would be disqualified. So I had that experience with Toastmasters International. I sent them an email. I said, hey, this is what I think should happen. And they said, sure, you make a good point. We're going to change that rule. So I sent them an email Monday morning, just this past Monday. And I said, look, it's not fair that Rich, every time I compete against him, he beats me. So I want you guys to make sure he cannot compete again. And they sent me a letter right back. Ed, you are one of our very respected, accredited speakers. And sure enough, we're going to disqualify Rich. Now, here's all he has to do. He just has to get through the regionals and then go to the semifinals and get through that and then get up on the big stage. And if he can win the contest, we're banning him for life from ever competing again. Now, if you know the contest rules, no, they're not making a special exception for me against Rich. It is actually a rule. Once you win the international speech contest, you can never, ever compete again. And that's a good rule, because otherwise there could be a speaker who wins it year after year after year. So I want Rich to win. I really want to see him go all the way, because you know what that means if he wins? I don't have to keep beating against him again. So I've got a decent chance. Now, I've continued to run and walk and talk, and my experience with Toastmasters, each time I've done a contest, I've learned something. I've had what I call the the positive coincidences or the happy accidents. Like, look at my conversation with Margaret Hope. Would that have happened if I'd have actually won the contest? Don't think so. I'd have been basking in all the praise, people saying, hey, you won the contest, you're going on to the district. But because I had an opportunity and she was standing alone and like, why not? I'll talk to her. I'll find out about this accredited speaker. And that gave me that opportunity. Sometimes these things happen. Something bad happens. Maybe we think it's bad, but in the long run, it might be good. When I had my injury with my tibia and was in the boot, I thought, well, this is not good. But I ended up doing the marathon with my daughter and decided, well, why not try to do 100 miles? And I walked the 100 miles. It changed my attitude about running and walking. And I decided that maybe walking is not so bad. And I continued to do the 100-mile races. And I got to a point 4 years ago where I was about to run my 200th 100-mile race. And a friend of mine, Andy Noyes, he said, Ed, I got a plan. You should go out and run on Wednesday, run the Born to Run race, 100 miles there. And then over the weekend, there's 200-mile races you can do in Las Vegas. Now, if you go do this race, it's in Los Olivos, and then I live in Bakersfield, come where I live and get a night's sleep, and then I'll take you to Las Vegas. And you can get number 198, 199, number 200. And so I did that. I got my 200th 100-mile race. Oh, it's the second person in the world to have 200 100-mile races. There's one person from Great Britain who had a few over that. Andy was an amazing guy. Andy and I would do a lot of races together. Many of the races that Andy and I would do together, Andy was a walker, didn't look much like a runner, a little bit larger, but he was a great walker. And he was my secret weapon. If I did a multi-day race during the night when most people would need to go get some sleep, I could go out and walk with Andy and he'd keep me going for hours, racking up the miles. Many of the races that I won was because of Andy. Got a picture of Andy. And here it is. This is my buddy Andy. Now, after I had ran my 200 100-mile race, and Andy knew that I had some big goals. I wanted to eventually have the most 100-mile races in the world. I wanted to eventually have the most 100-mile wins in the world, the most 100-mile seconds, the most 100-mile thirds. I like to win. And so Andy was with me in that goal. He was encouraging me throughout my journey. A week after I had ran my 200 100-mile race, it was Andy's 58th birthday, May 2nd. 2 days later, May 4th, Andy's wife woke up and Andy did not. It was a shock to all of us who knew Andy, a great guy, left us way too soon, and a great friend to me. I reached out to his wife a few weeks after I knew her and she knew how close Andy and I were. And I said, Blanca, I'd really love to honor Andy. And Andy always wore these iconic shirts. I was the gesture. Andy always had these shirts. He had a yellow one, a blue one, a green one. They were from REI. They had this particular pattern, and that's the shirts that Andy always wore. So I asked his wife, I said, you know, would it be okay if I could get one of Andy's shirts I could wear in my races? She said, Ed, we'd be honored. And she sent me 3 of these shirts. Now, this shirt is actually the very shirt Andy's wearing in that picture. I also have a green one. I have a blue one. Since then, every single 100-mile race I ran in an Andy shirt. Now, a week from now, this very moment, I'll be back at that race called Born to Run. It's going to be my 300th 100-mile race. It'll be 100 100-mile race finishes I've had in Andy's shirt. I'll be the first person to complete 300 100-mile races. And when I'm doing a 100-mile race, you heard Bond earlier talk about how it's not uncommon that you're in a race and that you might start to think, why am I doing this? Well, Bond, you know, that doesn't happen to guys that run ultra. No, it does actually. It happens quite often. And quite often I am in a race and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? I'm not having any fun. You know, my stomach's giving me issues, or maybe I've got blistered feet, or I'm getting cramps. There's all kinds of things that happen in a race, especially in a 100-mile race. But when I'm in that race and I'm having a difficult time, you know who I think about? I think about Andy. Andy's not here. Andy can't do these 100-mile races. Now, Andy never got the chance to see me move up into first place with the most 100-mile races in a lifetime. The most 100-mile wins, the most 100-mile seconds, the most 100-mile thirds. All of those happened since Andy passed. But every race I do, Andy comes with me. So what am I going to do after I do 300 100-mile races? I'm going to go for number 400. This is going to take me a few years. Uh-oh, my wife just said, no, that can't be. She thought 300 was going to be it. I was going to hang up this year's. No, I'll only do 1 or 2 a month. I won't do, by the way, last year I did 56 in 1 year and broke the world record for most 100-mile races in a year. So why do I keep doing that? Well, because I enjoy it and because I like the challenge. And why do I keep entering the contest in Toastmasters? Well, because I like the challenge, I like the fun, I like the opportunity to compete with other people. And those of you who have been in coaching positions, you know there's something that we don't like when we hear someone that we're coaching. We don't like it when they say, I'll try. Because to us it means, well, really? If you're just going to try, then you're not really putting forth a full effort. And I used to think that. In fact, if you remember what Yoda said to young Skywalker, no, I'm going to totally butcher his voice, but I'll do my best. Do or do not. There is no try. But I believed in that for a long time until I started competing at Toastmasters, because there is a try. There's no guarantee when you compete that you're going to win. You're getting judged against other people who are also trying to win. So I do believe that trying can be enough. And so how many times will I try to win the Toastmasters speech contest? Well, let's see. We've all heard this. If at first you don't succeed, try again. And I tried in 2016 and, I didn't win, didn't move on. And so I tried again in 2017 and didn't move on. And then I tried again in 2018 and 2019 and 2020 and 2021 and 2022 and 2023 and 2024 and 2025. Now, look, I ran out. I can't compete anymore unless I just start adding more to that. How many times am I going to try in the speech contest for Toastmasters International? I'm going to keep trying until they do what? Till they say, you're out of here. You can't compete ever again. I encourage you to try. You are rock stars. You have potential to do amazing things. As Bond had said, write a book. Whatever your goal might be, attempt it. Now, I've learned that there are some steps to accomplishing a goal. And if you want to be a rock star, here they are. You need to see it, see that goal. You need to team it. That means pick people who are going to be around to support you. You need to act on it. No matter how much you see it and how much of a good team you have to support you, it's going to take you acting on it. In fact, not just acting on it, but how about some action? And then there's the R's. Well, you're going to need to have a routine. Anyone who's ran knows that you've got to have a routine. There's someone that's on Zoom that I, like Bond, was really impressed with because they had a run streak. 5 years, last I knew, and maybe it's gone much beyond that, Kimberly Smith Austin ran every single day. And I talked about that. I said, man, I don't know how you do that. In fact, I remember there was an event that we went to. It was a speaking event, and we didn't get back into Murrieta until I think it was 9 or 10 at night. And Kimberly said, gotta go out and do my 4 miles. I'm like, Kimberly, are you serious? She said, yep, can't break the streak. So I don't know if she's still doing the streak, but she got me to doing a streak. And I've got a streak now that's almost 1,000 days. Every day, I don't do 4, I do a 5K, which is 3.1 miles. And if I've just raced the day before, then I'll walk it because walking is a good thing. So routine, you need to have a routine. Review what you're doing and revise if you need to. And then rinse and repeat. If you want to get to a major goal, you've got to just keep at it over and over. Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat. Review it, revise, and then also reward yourself a little bit. If you can keep doing those, I think just about every goal you can come up with, you'll eventually get to it. Now, if you go out and look up to the night sky, you don't see a star, you see stars. So the very last step, obviously you don't have to do this, but I encourage you to do it. And that is share it with others. Pass it on, help them accomplish their goal. Now I got a package in the mail, well, from Amazon, and it is from England. You know what's in England, don't you? Guinness World Record. I'll open it. I think I know what's in here. Don't need that or that. It's this certificate right here. It's from Guinness. It's a world record certificate, but it's not my name on it. This is actually a friend of mine that I coach, Desi, and she was just at the London Marathon just 10 days ago. And she is a world record holder because that race had 56,000 finishers and Desi was one of them. So although I do not have a Guinness World Record, one of my coaching students does, and I'm proud of her, and I'm happy to live vicariously through her. You may never get a Guinness World Record. It doesn't matter. What really matters is having a goal and going for it, giving it your all and enjoying the experiences that come along and then sharing it with others. If you do that, I think that might be a fulfilling life. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ed. We're so glad you were here. I tongue-in-cheek challenged you to see whether you could keep everyone's attention for 60 minutes, and I didn't see anybody leave. So I think you accomplished that goal. I so appreciate that opportunity to hear that stimulating message, and we are looking forward to hearing you again. Maybe sometime you'll just give a pure speech, a short, the shortened version of how to become an accredited speaker, and maybe we'll give you a little company sometime out of our District 12. Okay, with that, we are going to call this to a close. I appreciate everyone in the audience. Do you have any quick comments from anybody that was on Zoom? I see we still have some people. Make sure your votes are in. And I think our meeting is, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's June 2nd. The June 2nd? 4th. I have it written down here. So June 4th. See you all on June 4th. And make sure you turn your ballots in wherever it is, either online or here in person. Thank you all for being here, and we will see you next month.